the power of more comprehensive nutrition and how in the genes are the information available that controls cellular synthesis of compounds that carry out the life processes, including not only protection for free radicals generated by the mitochondria, but apoptosis are a program that's in the genes that periodically cells get older and they're replaced. Fact is, the most common replaced rapidly is the cells lining the GI tract, starting in the mouth down through the anus, are replaced about every 7 to 10 days. And these cells come, basal cells rise up and mature. And the body makes stem cells that migrate in and replace some of these cells, which is that process called apoptosis. And lo and behold, the active ingredient from the aloe, the acemannan, in this membrane domain, fosters improvement or extension of apoptosis as we get older, that and if we don't have a broad diet, we begin to age and wear out. Well, this is the blue zones that National Geographic has found that the apoptosis is extended into the later years by what's present in the nutrient supply. And there were common denominators in all these blue zones that they have identified. And number one is a plant-based diet. And all the individuals in these zones have personal gardens. And this allows the plant or the produce on the plant to ripen on the plant and allow the genes in the plant to put the nutrients in there that the DNA calls for in cellular synthesis to make these various cytokines or cell activators that lead to good health. Now, I don't know if I can get this to work or not, but this is a demonstration in the 1800s by an individual named Brownian. He was a research biologist, and
Common question I get asked by my students is, how do we know that atoms are real? Well, rather than just sit there and tell them stuff, I'd rather them see with their own eyes. And I want to show you that same evidence that a Swedish botanist named Robert Brown first saw in 1829, and that was used by Albert Einstein in 1905 to confirm the existence of atoms. All you need for this is a microscope, preferably one that goes to 400x. This one goes to 1,000 power, however, and if you're going to use that powerful of a microscope, you're going to need some immersion oil. But all you really need for this, if you have a basic microscope, is a glass slide and a cover slip, and you need some milk, preferably one that has at least 1% fat in it. I diluted this with a 1-to-1 ratio of water to milk, and you just need a little paper towel to wick up any excess on the side. All you got to do is take a little drop of milk, put it right in the center of the slide, just like that. You don't need much at all. Take the cover slip, drop it right into place. And I have a very thin amount, but if you have excess, you do want to use the paper towel to kind of wick up any excess on the side. Take the slide and put it on your microscope. Use my other hand for this. Stick the slide into place. And then you're going to want to use your high power objective. So I'm at low, medium, high, and I should say I want to use the extra high power oil immersion. This is 100, and then with the 10 power, this is 1,000 power. Lock it into place, and I'm going to use a little bit of that immersion oil. Put a little drop right here. And then all I have to do is I lower down the objective until it makes contact with the immersion oil, just like that. And now we're going to go look through the eyepiece. Okay, I've got it focused. Let's go have a look. This is what Robert Brown saw in 1829. You'll see the little droplets of milk fat are bouncing around. He wasn't sure exactly what this was, and although he was using pollen grain, he actually saw virtually the same thing. If I zoom in, you'll notice the little drops of milk fat are very animated. Now, back then, they didn't know what this was. Some people thought that maybe these are living organisms, kind of like what you would see in a pond sample. Some people thought that maybe it was a mirage, kind of like on a road on a hot day, causing maybe a little rippled appearance. But Albert Einstein, at the age of 26 in 1905, he was single-handedly able to demonstrate that this was actually atomic theory, visible with the eye. Albert Einstein said that atoms are vibrating, and the atoms are kind of bumping into these little bubbles. And you can see the bubbles kind of knocking around like this. It's kind of like if you were to go to a concert and there was a mosh pit, you would be knocked around as well, with everybody banging their heads and jumping around. This here, of course, is not proof of atoms, but no one has come up with a better explanation for this Brownian motion than atomic theory. This here, ladies and gentlemen, is evidence itself for the existence of atoms.
If you notice, there was this square came in that showed black little dots that were really dancing. That's if you use carbon particles, lamp black, and with a drop of water. And that's what I saw when I was in college in biochemistry. And I point out that 60% of the body is water. And I suspect this is the spark of life that is, I was pointing out that in the faint blue in the cartoon of the cell is the water with electrolytes in it. And it's the water is kind of like if you see a pool table, that the H2O molecule has that amount of energy to hit the fat vacuoles or the carbon particles that you saw so vividly as it was being presented. And this is going on inside the cell, and there is no life in the plant kingdom or in the animal kingdom without water. Now, oxygen is very essential, and you can only go minutes, generally speaking, depending on the temperature, without permanent damage to the cells. But water, you can only go a few days without it, whereas without you can go without food for weeks, particularly if you have a little fat storage in your body. But the oxygen and water are very essential to the life of the cell. Well, I'm trying to advance the slides, and they're not advancing. Okay. Now I'm going to go into some what differences all of this make. Well, this is Cole that had been in coma for 3 years when this picture is taken. And the story was that his parents bought a new house, and they did not know the smoke detectors weren't connected, and they had a fire, and his older brother died due to smoke inhalation, and Cole was a baby and was didn't die, but he was in coma due to the hypoxia from the inhalation of the toxins. Well, and his doctor wanted me to come to Washington State because this doctor was not only an MD, but a PhD in biochemistry. And the mother had given Kyle a 6 month supply of our dietary supplements at that time, which were built around the active ingredient from the aloe plant that I have been stressing, the Acemannan. Now, he was not totally normal, but he woke up, and the pediatrician wanted me to explain why. And this is just a photograph to prove that I'll make patient calls even in Washington State. It was very emotionally stimulating to know Kyle had awakened from his coma, and you could tell that his brain was working because his mother was very attractive. And when she would come in the room, though he doesn't focus his eyes good and all, he would go, woo, woo, very positive sound to the side of his attractive mother. Now, this is the electrocardiogram or brain activity in March 2000 while he was in coma. And when he was started on the more comprehensive nutrition built around the active ingredient from the aloe plant, this was his electrical activity of the brain in the EEG when he awakened from his coma. That's objective proof that this child, something positive and good is happening. Now, in addition to this improvement of this patient, in 2003, received a phone call from Canada wanting me to come up and speak about this nutritional technology to a conference that the chiefs of the native Indian population had. And they were having a conference on fetal alcohol syndrome, FAS. When we were making plans for me to come up there, they said that the reason they invited me, that they had 7 children that were taken away from their alcoholic mothers. That's what causes the fetal alcohol syndrome, the toxic damage to the brain cells from the alcohol breakdown products. And that these 7 children taken away from their mothers and placed in foster homes had been in special education, making no progress academically, and there were behavior problems in school as well as at home. Well, the 7 parents, foster parents, got together and gave these children our more comprehensive nutrition built around the active ingredient from the aloe plant, Acemannan. And they repeated their IQs because they had all been less than 50. And after this progressive period, they began to progress in their special education, and their behavior improved not only in school but at home. And they wanted me to come up there and tell them why. And this was found out a few weeks after I told them I'd certainly come up and speak about this. And before this, all I had ever said in my lectures was about the 9 molecules and 3 chains assembled in the endoplasmic reticulum to make this membrane domain for cell-to-cell communication. This did not explain how these children's IQs had improved. And I looked at the ceiling and said, Lord, help me. I'm going to go up there and make a fool of myself trying to tell them that this domain on the membrane of cells that is the biochemistry that we had found was the cause of this, because it just didn't make sense. Well, to make a long story short, here is a example of there are about 36 traits of fetal alcohol syndrome. And the first graph to the left shows that the average of these 7 children was 27.7 for the 36 potential traits of a fetal alcohol syndrome damage. And they range from about 20 to 35, I believe it is, of the 36 FS traits that the foster parents and teachers could identify that this was bad fetal alcohol syndrome symptoms. And then we also said, how severe are these symptoms? And the severity scores, we said, when they, like whether it was 35 or 20, each one of them on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? Well, before they were with their IQs at about 50, their average severity of their different traits was 8 out of 10. That is very severe fetal alcohol syndrome damage. Well, over to the right, after receiving more comprehensive nutrition built around the aloe plant, the average dropped to 2.5, and some of them were as low as 1 out of a range of 1 to 10. And the graph to the far right is that if you calculate it, it's about a 67% average improvement in these children that had staggered these people that took care of them and were trying to teach them and to see them awaken. And of course, I was faced with how is this possible? Well, as this was in March 2003, and they wanted me to tell how this was possible. And I guess prayers are answered because in the Journal of American Medical Association, they had a single page about a research project at Johns Hopkins University, jointly between the National Institutes of Health and Johns Hopkins Medical School. And they had 4 females that had leukemia, and all the treatment for leukemia had failed. So they took them and put them in reverse isolation in the hospital. Everyone wore a gown and a mask to keep from giving them some kind of infection. And they gave them high dose chemotherapy with the ideas to kill all the cells in their bone marrow. After they killed all the cells in the bone marrow, then they drew bone marrow from donors, and the donors were all males. And they injected the bone marrow, and it was taken up by the blood and carried to the bone inside the bones of these 4 females. Pardon me. And this planting of bone marrow took, and the 4 females were able to get out of reverse isolation and to have normal blood picture for a while, and then the leukemia came back. And with this failure with the bone marrow, these 4 females died, and they did autopsies. And what they found out was that inside their cells, they had Y chromosomes because from the bone marrow of the males, which all the cells had the little Y chromosome and only one X chromosome, females would have 2X. In the apoptosis, where cells were being renewed by stem cells, they had Y chromosomes throughout cells in their body. When I saw this, I knew what had happened in the fetal alcohol syndrome damaged children. And that's, I went the wrong direction. To finish this story, The I have published a small uh, syllabus of the research that was done to show and prove that by giving the Aloe Acemannan, that the bone marrow generates millions of stem cells. And this was proven by flow cytometry. And in these fetal alcohol damaged children, that we see this improvement in these graphs, stem cells migrated into the brain and differentiated and became where the cells had been killed by the metabolic products of alcohol. They had new brain cells, and one of these children, that had an IQ of way over 100, began to write poetry and also sit down and before had not been able to do the ABCs or count to 100, read the latest Harry Potter book and sit down and told their foster mother the story that was in the book from beginning to the end in sequence. This was incredible improvement in brain function from children that had all been less than 50 IQ. Now, the next section is a child that had a mitochondrial gene defect that had been confined to a wheelchair because she couldn't walk. But her history was that in Ukraine, she was found wrapped in blankets in a corner all-night restaurant booth, abandoned by the mother of the child because she knew there was something wrong with it and couldn't do anything with it. And this child was adopted by a couple in Atlanta, Georgia, that could not have children and wanted to take care of her. And lo and behold, they started her on the dietary supplements that we had at that time that were built around the Aloe Acemannan. Well, I had an appointment to meet with the family, and they were late for about 30 minutes because she was the dance teacher that she was going for dance lessons came late and held them late. And so I sort of celebrated her being late because she was going to dance classes instead of being confined to a wheelchair like she had before, being provided with more comprehensive nutrition that generated millions of stem cells from her own bone marrow. And this example is that she was also taking gymnastics to develop her abilities for neuromuscular coordination. But that's just another example of the power of more comprehensive nutrition generating adult stem cells and what the benefits can be to a child. Now, this is another child we had that during when the mother was pregnant, they did the typical scans, and the dimensions from the elbow to the wrist and from the knee to the ankle were short, and the dimensions of the head was wider from the ears. And the ratio from chin to the top of the head and from one ear to the other was such, and they made in the utero diagnosis of achondroplastic dwarfism. When she was born, well, first was the mother started taking the dietary supplements built around the acetylated mannose, and the picture in 205 is that she had grown, and that by the age of 5, there was no dwarfism, that the length between her elbows and wrists and knees and ankles were within the limits of normal, but for a short individual. But most important, which happens in dwarfism, is that the growth centers in the long bones mature and don't proliferate. Well, hers were normal. And then when she was 6 years old, here's a picture of her, and notice how the uh, ratio of the shape of her skull is, and we have older pictures of her. When she gets up to about 20 years old, she is still a short but normal child. And this is the growth and weight chart of her. And you can see some dots that are on that graph that are below the normal range, which are the long completed lines. And she slowly begins to come up into the middle that you see there from 0 to 18 years. She is nearly to average in regard to her height and her weight. Then that's the story of the incredible support to normal gene function that can be corrected by more comprehensive nutrition. Now, this is a picture of a little girl that probably it's been on the cover of some throwaway journals that state associations had. She's probably helped more children with these pictures of her than any other child that's ever been born, because at the age of 9, I recall when her mother, Barbara, she lives in Las Vegas, contacted me that at the age of 9, she could not count to 100. She could not say her ABCs. She missed an awful lot of special education in school because if she didn't have an infection of one ear, she had it of both ears. If she didn't have infection of the ear, she had it in her sinuses and in bronchitis. And she also had asthma, which was triggered by these infections. So she missed a lot of school. However, at the age of 13, I was provided this picture, and I accused the mother of taking her to one of the malls for glamour shots. There's no way this could happen. She said, no, both of these pictures were taken by a itinerant photographer that came to the special education schools. And you can see in the second program the tiles of the classroom of the school, that this is just a picture of her that with no retouching or anything, and it's a little book. And she is now about 30 years old. She has graduated from high school in special education, and she went to trade school, and she has a job at an auto parts company, and she has gotten recognition awards for congeniality and getting along well with patrons that come to the store. And lo and behold, she handles on the computer the payroll for the employees there at the thing. So this is, as I say, I think this child has helped more children because people looked at this and said, if this can do this for this child, it can do anything. And so people tried it, and sure enough, over and over again, I am one of the most blessed people to have the feedback of the wonderful things that this Aloe Acemannan present in the aloe leaf gel that have been used for 5,000 years. It's even mentioned in the papyrus in Egypt. Alexander the Great had a wagon that had aloe plants in big urns to break the leaves off, to put on the wounds of arrows and swords, and top of warfare they had that time to accelerate healing and to reduce infections. And these were things that we were able to prove. But in addition, they're inside the body. It does wonderful things in the metabolism and supporting the engineering and design of life that is present in DNA.